Let me tell you of the days of high adventure.
Hey there, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the show where we help you to play miniatures wargaming on a budget. It is I, Commander Cheapskate, and we're back with another episode of the Golden Age. This is our series that is dedicated to Warhammer Fantasy Battle Reports, and this is Battle Report number 131. It is a 3,000 point battle that was fought between the Empire and the Lizardmen. My friend King Khalifa is bringing the Schwarzwald Free Companies his 3,000 point Empire army, and I'm playing the Lizards of Waaaghz, my 3,000 points Lizardman army. So in case you're tuning in for the very first time, what's ended up happening is that we're actually created a brand new 3,000 point Lizardman army for the studio's collection. And so what I'll be doing on this Battle Report series is I'll be taking this Lizardman army and I'll be taking it through its paces by having it fight against every single other army located within our collection. So on this Battle Report, I'm taking on the Empire. So we're going to play some background music real quick. As the music is playing, we'll show you photos of both armies as well as their rosters. And if you want to see exactly what we're bringing for this Battle Report, you can pause and take a look at your own leisure, or look down in the description box below for further details. So that being said, let's get this Battle Report on a roll.
Crom, I've never prayed you before. I have no tongue for it. No one, not even you, will remember if we were good men or bad, why we fought, or why we died. No. All that matters is that two stood against many. That's what's important. Valor pleases you, Crom. So grant me one request. Grant me revenge. And if you do not listen, then the hell with you.
Assemble the army!
So the scenario that we'll be playing for this Battle Report is Battle Line. It is the most typical game of Warhammer Fantasy that we play on this channel, with standard deployment as well as standard victory conditions. So with the scenario rules over, let's go on and talk about battle plans as well as deployments. So here's Ulric shot of the entirety of the battlefield. As you can see, we are playing on a 4x6 table. My buddy King Khalifa is deployed on the far side of the table, and I'm deployed on the near side of the table. Now this one, I do have my work cut out for me, and the reason why is because King Khalifa's Empire army is largely a defensive army. Pretty much how his tactic usually works when it comes to the using of this Schwarzwald Free Company army is that he pretty much keeps his center units exactly where they're located at. He doesn't really move them all that often. The only time he actually moves them is if he's fighting another static army like a dwarf gun line, in which case he then advances forward. But in most cases though, he usually plays defensively. At the same time, his two flanks on the left and right hand side, those are the offensive elements of his army. He's got a huge honking unit of 21 inner circle knights with great weapons on the left flank and 2 steam tanks on the right hand flank. At the same time, he also has archers as well as cannon and hellblaster volley gun on his front lines, and what he does is he's going to basically stand there while I try to cross the battlefield as quickly as I can to destroy them. I'm mainly playing a close combat oriented army because it's a Lizardman army, so I do have my work cut out for me. I'm going to have to try to move as quickly as I can in order to close the distance between our two armies and try to destroy them that way, at the same time protect my flanks. Now, luckily for me though, I do have some magic that could help me out in this battle report. I do have the Lore of Heavens on one of my Skink Priests with the Comet of Cassandora, which is perfect to use against static armies like this, because then I can just put the Comet in his back ranks and I'll blow him up if he doesn't quickly leave his areas. So I do have that going for me, but at the same time though, I do also have some handicaps coming my way. I really don't have anything to deal with 2 steam tanks, to be perfectly honest. I have no way of actually destroying those 2 steam tanks unless I'm using magic, but my magic is more defensive with more concentration on buffs rather than offensive capabilities. So I'm probably got to do is I'm probably to tar pit those steam tanks by using my huge unit of Thesaurus, which are my unit of 40 Source Warriors on the right hand side, as well as my Bastiladon, in order to kind of keep those tanks in place. At the same time, also try to delay that unit of knights from outflanking me by using my my Col 1 Knights, as well as my my Col 1 Riders, as well as my Old Blood on top of a Connoisseur. So hopefully I can use that Scar Veteran with the Connoisseur to stop the attack on the left hand side, and then charge forward with my forces with my Skinks protecting my left hand side and my Temple Guard protecting my center. And that's pretty much the battle plan I'm kind of going with this one. So with battle plans over with, let's go ahead and talk about deployment. Alright, so first of all, starting off with my army, the Lizards of Waaaghz. On my far left-hand flank, that unit's called the Jurassic Jousters. Is you have 10 Cold One Riders with Musician and Standard Bearer. They have shields as well as spears, and they're mounted on Cold Ones. Now right next on the right-hand side, that is Gatorade and Powerade. Gatorade is a Saurus Old Blood. He's got a shield as well as Fencer's Blades, Glittering Skills, as well as a Talisman Endurance, so that way people are trying to hit him at a 5-up at the least. More often than not, they'll try to be hitting him at a 6-up. He's also mounted on a Connoisseur named Powerade, who's got Blood Roar as well as Loping Stride, so that way he's got Swift Stride, and at the same time my opponent has to roll an additional d6 for leadership tests for terror text whenever I charge forward with my Connoisseur, so that part's kind of nice. So moving to the center of my army, on the left-hand side, that unit is called the Karma Chameleons. You have 24 Skinks with full command. They have Lustrian Javelins as well as shields. They also have 3 Kroxigor equipped with great weapons, that unit. Also leading that unit, I have 2 Skink Priests on the left-hand side. That is Slag. He is a Skink Priest, level 2 lore of Wizards, a Wizard with the lore of Beast. He has Wiston's Wild Form as well as the Amber Spear. He's also packing the Sword of Striking for +1 hit in close combat. So that way this unit has magical attacks in case I go up against something that's ethereal. And at the same time, he's also got the Cube of Darkness for Dispel and the ability to dispel remaining play spells, which is also really good. Next to him on the right hand side, that is Snarl. He's another Skink Priest. He's a level 1 wizard with the Lore of Heavens, and he's packing the Common of Cassandora. He's also got a Dispel Scroll, and at the same time the Ruby Ring of Ruin, so that way he has a magic missile attack. And then right next on the right hand side, that unit is called the Guacamole Guards. You know, 36 Temple Guards with full command. They're packing halberds, light armor, shields, as well as a standard discipline for +1 leadership. Now normally they would not be able to use the general's leadership, but the general's in this unit, so because of that he automatically gets that. That character's name is Kermit the Slan. He is my Slan Mage Priest. He's also the general of my army as well. He's also got the Battle Standard Bearer upgrade. He's a level 4 wizard with the lore of High Magic. He's also got Lore Master for the High Magic as well. He's got Channeling Staff, so that way he gets +1 to his channeling attempts. And the reason why is because he's got Focus of Mystery, which allows him to be Lore Master for High Magic and Harmonic Convergence, because he gets 2 additional dice for channeling, and having that 5-up is really, really nice. So making my far right-hand flank, we have the Source, which is a unit of 4 Swordist Warriors with the Musician and Standard Bearer. They're also packing spears and shields. And right next to them on the right-hand side, that is the Bulbasaur. It is Bastiladon with a Solar Engine. And finally, Vanguard up forward are the Charizards, a unit of 3 Pterodon Riders with Fire Leech Bolas, and they're mounted on Pterodons. And that makes up my deployment for this one. So moving across the table for the Schwarzwald Free Companies, on the left-hand side, that unit is called the Vagrant Brotherhood. Is a unit of 20 Inner Circle Knights. They have full command as well as great weapons. They have full plate armor as well as shields. They're riding Barded Warhorses, and they're also packing the Steel Standards. That way they get to re-roll filled charge distances, which is actually kind of nice for them. Also in that unit too is Sir Tybault Krauss, the Vagrant Knight. He is a captain of the Empire. He's got a great weapon, full plate armor and shield. He's also riding a Barded Warhorse, and he has the Crown of Command. And then right next to him on the right-hand side, that is Donner, which is an Empire Great Cannon. And in that unit in the back there, that is a unit of 20 Halberdiers called the Blue Company, which is a detachment to the Black Company. And that leads us directly to the center of King Khalifa's deployment. In the center there we have the Black Company, which is a unit of 37 great swords with full command. They also have great weapons, full plate armor, as well as the standard of discipline as well. And leading that unit, we also have 3 characters. First of all, we have the General of the Army. That character's name is Gregor von Konigsmarck. He is an Arch Lector. He is also the General of this army. He's packing a great weapon. He has the Armor Meteoric Iron for 2-up armor save, as well as 1-up armor save, as well as the White Cloak of Ulric. So that way he has a 5-up ward save and -1 to hit against in close combat. And he's also packing his battle prayers. Also in that unit we have Viktor Helsbraad of the Wilds. He's a battle wizard lord with level 4 lore of life. He's got Earth Blood, Flesh to Stone, Throat of Vines, as well as Regrowth, and he's got the Book of Ashur for +1 casting as well as dispel attempts. And then also finally in that unit we have Dieter Munz, the Griffon Guard. He's a captain of the Empire with Battle Standard Bearer upgrade. He's got a great weapon, full plate armor and shield, and he's packing the Griffon Banner to give this unit twice as many in terms of rank bonuses. And then right in front of them is a unit called Rommel's Rangers. Is you have 10 archers with bows, and they have 2 5-man archer detachments on either side of it. And finally on the right hand side we have the Red Company, which is a unit of 20 halberdiers with shields, and those guys make up the detachment for the Black Company. And then finally on the far right hand side we have Blitzen, which is a Hellblaster volley gun. And finally, making up his far right-hand flank of King Khalifa's army, we have 2 steam tanks. The one on the left-hand side is the Panzer Baron, and the one on the right-hand side is the Panzer Wolf. And that pretty much makes up his deployment for this one. A pretty hard-hitting list, at the least. So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, we're going directly to the top of turn number 1, and both King Khalifa and I roll off our initiative to see which of us will be going first. Alright, so that takes directly to the top of turn number 1. As you can see in this photo, the Lizardmen get to go first, so I got the initiative on this one. So the first thing I do, of course, is I don't declare any charges just because I know I'm not going to be able to make that distance, and I pretty much move up everything as quickly as I possibly can across the battlefield. The first thing I do is I march fly the Charizards, my 3 Pterodon Riders, flying right over the Hellblaster Volley Gun Blitzen, and I do drop rocks. And I do manage, I think I killed one of the crew members of the Hellblaster Volley Gun, which is actually kind of nice, so first blood to me. Everything else just marches up forward as quickly as it can. I send up my Jurassic Jousters to the left-hand side, so that way they can intercept the Vagrant Brotherhood. They decide to try to sweep around the left. At the same time, I also send up Gatorade and Powerade right behind that building there on the left-hand side, so that way Donner, which is the cannons looking on the left-hand side, can't reach me. And the reason why that is a good idea is because the cannons are very terrifying, especially for monsters. And at the same time, the Panzer Bear and the Panzer Wolf can't get line of sight on Powerade and Gatorade, so kind of tuck them there. At the same time, I also march up my Karma Chameleons between the orange roof building as well as the ruins in the center of the battlefield to protect my left-hand flank. I march up the Dosaurus as well as the Guacamole Guards, heading between the ruins as well as that barn there in the middle. Hopefully, I'm going to try to keep on the other side of that barn to prevent those steam tanks from getting to my troops, because I plan on using the beam of Chotek from my Bastillid on the right-hand side. And so hopefully through the magic phase, we'll be able to get off a really powerful version of that and maybe cause some damage on those steam tanks. And that pretty much makes it my movement phase for this one. So here's a close-up of the Jurassic Jousters, as well as Gatorade and Powerade, as well as the Karma Chameleons, moving up as quick as they can on the left-hand flank, at the same time taking cover behind that building, so I'm going to atomize by cannon fire. And here's a close-up of the Guacamole Guards, as well as the Dosaurus, as well as the Bulbasaur, moving up as quick as they can on the right-hand side of the battlefield. And finally, here's a close-up of the Charizards, who dropped rocks right on top of Blitzen, the Hellblaster Volley Gun, and I did manage to kill one of the crew members, which is absolutely fantastic. So now that we're done with that, we go directly towards the magic phase. So all things considered, I actually had a very powerful magic phase this time around. I actually got quite a bit of power dice. Having that harmonic convergence in the channeling staff, the Staff of Sorcery, really helps out to get power dice, especially magic phase with this army. So the first thing I was able to do is actually I casted out the boosted version of the Amber Spear directly into Donner. So my character Slag, he opened fire with that right directly into the cannon and destroyed it outright, blowing up Donner and getting rid of that threatening war machine on the left-hand side. And unfortunately for my buddy King Khalifa, he did fail his panic test for his Rommel's Rangers. Now the Blue Red Company actually passed no problem for having a unit destroyed within 6 inches. Those guys stood their ground. But when it came towards his Rommel's Rangers, he actually failed his roll twice. He rolled 11 and then a boxcar the second time around. So because of that, his Rommel's Rangers do flee. I think they flee back 7 or 8 inches, so they go through their own line 10 directly to the back, which is kind of hilarious, seeing those Rangers kind of run away, which is absolutely fantastic for me. So I do manage to cast the boosted version of Soul Quelch, which is the magic missile spell that my Kermit the Slang can cast. So I actually cast that, roll I think 4d6 strength 4 hits directly out on Blitzen. Now a lot of you guys are probably thinking the same thing. What's good is a strength 4 weapon against a toughness 7 war machine? Well, 6 is still wound, and I actually rolled a bunch of 6s on this one. I think I managed to get like 13 or 14 hits on this thing, and I think 5 of them were 6s. So because of that, blew up Blitzen and managed to kill the crew at the same time, which is absolutely fantastic. Unfortunately though, I was unable to cast the Beam of Chotek spell like I was hoping to cast on the steam tanks. Unfortunately, my opponent took his last 2 dispel dice and rolled boxcars, so because I wasn't able to get that spell off, so that part was kind of sad. As for the rest of the turn, I'm out of range for any of my shooting elements, so we don't shoot this turn, and pretty much no one's engaged in close combat, and that ends my turn for turn number 1. So with that, we go directly to the bottom of turn number 1 for the Empire, and this photo is taken after the movement phase. And as you can see in this photo, not much movement really takes place. Like I said before, my buddy King Khalifa, he pretty much plays a static defensive army when it comes to his Empire forces. He doesn't even move up his knights for the most part. Pretty much he's going to keep his knights back for the most part, so that way he can take more chance of taking pot shots at me and, you know, try to weaken down my army before I close the distance with him. So because that, his infantry forces pretty much stay exactly where they're located at, same thing with the knights. Now as for the steam tanks on the right hand side, the Panzer Baron rolls a misfire when it's generating steam points, and so because it loses all of his steam points as a reaction for that, so the tank is just steadily just kind of stuck there. As for my friend King Khalifa though, for the right hand side of the Panzer Wolf, he actually spends 2 of his steam points to move up forward. I think he only moves up like 5 or 6 inches. He doesn't actually go very far, but he's reserving his other 2 steam points, that way he can fire a steam cannon directly into my Bastillodon, the Bulbasaur on the right hand side. And the last thing that ends up happening is that Rommel Ranger does manage to pass its rally test, so those guys turn 180. So here's a close-up of the Vagrant Brotherhood as well as the Blue Company standing their ground because they don't really want to take the offensive at this point, and to be honest, why would they? They have a better chance of whittling me down a little bit before I actually close a distance with them. At the same time, there's a close-up of Rommel's Rangers as well as his 2 detachments who managed to rally, passing the rally test and turning 180 degrees that caused some more problems for my army. And here's a close-up of the Panzer Baron, which is pretty much stranded because of a misfire roll earlier in the turn. At the same time, you can see that the Panzer Wolf is slowly chugging along. So with the move phase over with, we go directly to the magic phase. So during the magic phase, my buddy King Cleaver actually had quite a successful one. The first thing he was able to do is get off most of his lure of life spells off. He was able to cast off Throne of Vines just because I let him have it, just because I didn't really want to just waste any of my Dispel dice trying to stop it. Unfortunately though, for me though, he actually got a couple of his spells off. First of all, he does put the Flesh to Stone off on the Blue Company. Those guys would get a 4+ to their toughness. I think the reason why he did that is because he was afraid of my Coleman Knights as well as Gatorade and Powerade charging in directly into the Blue Company, which is actually a pretty good ploy. And lastly, his Lore of Metal Wizard. I forgot to mention this guy earlier, Maximilian Max. He's got a Dispel Scroll, level 2 metal with the Glittering Robes and the Enchanted Blaze of Iban. He managed to get Glittering Robes off on the Red Company on the right hand side, so those guys have scaly skin now. So because of those guys have a 4-up armor save, which is actually pretty good for core choice halberdiers for the most part. And in the shooting phase, tragedy strikes. So as you can see in this photo, pretty much what ends up happening in the shooting phase, he basically does 2 things, King Cleaver does. The first thing he actually takes the Panzer Baron, which actually has got 1 steam point, and he has him open fire with his Great Cannon directly into that barn. So because he's firing the Great Cannon, obviously he wounds the barn, no problem. He actually rolls a 6 for the wounds and was able to destroy that thing outright. So just like that, the barn is now destroyed by that cannon shot. And the reason why he did that, and he told me this later on, was so that way he could actually go forward and then have nothing obstruct his line of advance when he's traveling with those steam tanks directly towards my right hand flank, which is pretty smart. I mean, the rules, you can destroy buildings with artillery, so he's only got the 1 steam point, might as well try it out. And the reason why he did that is because the Panzer Wolf actually got its shot off with his Great Cannon off directly onto the Bulbasaur. Managed to kill my Bulbasaur off the bat. He originally was going to keep the Panzer Baron's steam cannon in reserve in case the Panzer Wolf wasn't able to get the job done on the Bulbasaur, but since the Bulbasaur got 1 shot at death and killed my monster, which is kind of sad, he took that extra shot and he blew up the barn, so that way he's got a clear advancement to the right hand side of the battlefield, which is absolutely terrifying for my Source Warriors. So now that we're done with the shooting phase, there is no combat phase, and we go directly to the top of turn number 2 for the Lizardmen. Alright, so that takes directly to the top of turn number 2 for the Lizardmen, and this photo is taken after the movement phase. And as you can see, for the most part, I just march up, continually trying to move up and try to close a distance as quickly as I can. The first thing I do is I declare a charge with the Charizards. The Charizards go directly into the back of the Panzer Baron. Now, I have no illusions. My Charizards are not going to be able to do anything against the Panzer Baron. However, the Panzer Baron currently doesn't have any steam points, which means that the crew member on board, the engineer, is the only guy you can fight, which means that I can hopefully bog down this unit for a little bit longer before it starts crashing directly into my units. So that's the good part about that. Now, because of that, now that I got the Panzer Baron taken care of for a turn, what I decided to do is I try to march up my forces as quick as I can. Once again, I march with the Guacamole Guards as well as the Thesaurus, moving them forward their maximum of 8 inches. I do take my Thesaurus and I move them slightly to the right so that way they can take on both Panzer Baron as well as the Panzer Wolf when the time comes. At the same time, I also, I think I just move up normally, I think, with my Skink Warriors from the Karmic Millions, so that way they're in range to open fire with their Javelins. At the same time, I also move up Powerade and Gatorade as well to close a distance in order to try to engage my opponent on the left-hand side. And then finally, I do move up my Jurassic Jousters just to normal allowance so that way I don't get countercharged by those Knights from the Vagrant Brotherhood. And that pretty much makes up the move phase for this one. So here's a close with the Jurassic Jousters, as well as Gatorade and Powerade moving up to assault the left-hand flank. What I'm hoping for is that I only move up my Jurassic Jousters just to normal movement allowance so that way I don't get countercharged by the Vagrant Brotherhood. However, with that being said, my plan here is I'm hoping that my buddy King Khalifa will take the bait and Travis Knights charge forward. Hopefully he'll fail his charge and puts him in a perfect position to be put in a pincer attack for my Jurassic Jousters as well as my Powerade and Gatorade, but I doubt that's going to really work out because King Khalifa is actually a pretty smart opponent. But at the same time though, it does prevent me from getting countercharged and also sets myself up nicely for some flanking charges later on. Meanwhile, here's a close-up of the Karmic Chameleons marching up forward as well as the Guacamole Guards moving up as quick as they can in order to engage my opponent's forces. And here's a close-up of the Thesaurus getting ready to sacrifice themselves in a valiant effort to keep those steam tanks from crashing into my right-hand flank of my army. And finally, here's a close-up of the Charizards charging directly into the Panzer Baron, nobly sacrificing their life in order to keep my more valuable units from being destroyed. So with the movement phase over with, we go directly to the magic phase. So during the magic phase, I did manage to get one of my buffs off. Most of my spells were dispelled by my opponent, but I was able to get off Wiston's Wild Form on the Karma Chameleons. So just like that, now all my Karma Chameleons, my Skink Warriors, are now Strength 4, Toughness 4, which is absolutely, sorry, Strength 3, Toughness 4, which is absolutely fantastic for my Skink Warriors. So that part was kind of nice. Which takes us directly to the shooting phase. Unfortunately for me though, my shots for my javelins were not really all that effective against the Blue Company, and the reason why is because they have the enchanted robes of Iban put on that unit, giving them a 5-up on their scaly skin, which basically means these guys basically have 3-up armor saves. However though, I was able to kill a handful of them. I think I was able to kill 4 of them, I believe, so that part was kind of nice, but you know, I'll take what I can get at this point. So with the shooting phase over with, we go directly to the combat phase, and as you can imagine, my Charizards do nothing against the Panzer Baron, but luckily for me, the captain of the Panzer Baron, the engineer, did nothing back to me either, so, you know, pretty much works out. Only unfortunately though, he's going to generate steam points, but that's okay, because he's got to spend those steam points destroying my Charizards and not having it impacting one of my units, which is always a good thing. So with the combat phase over with, we go directly to the bottom, turn number 2 for the Empire. Alright, so that takes us directly to the bottom of turn number 2 for the Empire, and once again this photo is taken after the move phase, and as you can see, for the most part, nothing moves in his army for the most part, really. His infantry forces primarily stand their ground. The only thing he does, of course, he does march up the Rommel's Rangers, so that way they can pass to their units to go over the other side there. So as you can see, they're now located right in their front like they usually are. At the same time, he keeps the Vagrant Brotherhood behind, so he doesn't fall for the bait, which I expect as much because King Khalifa is a really smart opponent. At the same time, the Panzer Baron is still engaged in close combat with my Charizards, but that's perfectly fine though, because he has generated steam points. I think he's generated 4 of them, so he's going to destroy those guys in grounding attack, which is kind of sad. At the same time, he also moves at the Panzer Wolf. Luckily for me though, he fell short by 4 inches from running into my Thesaurus, generated 4 steam points in order to do that. Rolled a bunch of 1s for his advance, so I got pretty lucky there, which gives me another turn before the pain comes my way with those 2 steam tanks, so, you know, that part's kind of nice. So here's a close-up of the Vagrant Brotherhood not taking the bait and pretty much standing their ground, as well as the Blue Company, with the archers taking point in order to protect them as a skirmishing screen. And here's a close-up of Rommel's Rangers, as well as their 2 detachments taking their positions right in front of their units like they're supposed to be. It's pretty much slipping through the gaps between those 2 units using their free form ability because they're skirmishing units. And I actually am terrified of those skirmishing units. And the reason why is because what ends up happening is my buddy King Khalifa likes to buff them using spells, which makes them kind of like an impenetrable wall of defense that keeps his more valuable units from being harmed, which is absolutely insane. But, you know, he uses it to great effect. And here is a close-up of the Panzer Wolf, which missed hitting my unit by a couple of inches, which is actually kind of nice, so bought myself another turn before the pain comes my way. And lastly, here's a close-up of the Panzer Baron getting ready to cause all kinds of destruction with the Charizards because he actually generated steam points this time around. So the move phase over with, we go directly to the magic phase. And in the magic phase, my buddy King Khalifa had a pretty much a lackluster magic phase. I think he only beat me with, I think, 1 or 2 power dice when it ended up happening. He actually rolled quite low for the wins of magic this turn around, while I managed to maximize the number of channeling dice I was able to get. Basically, I have 5 channeling dice every round because I get 3 with my slam because of harmonic convergence. I also got my 2 skink priests as well, which gives me 5. Of those 3, every 5 up, I get power dice, so that part was kind of nice. In fact, if I remember correctly, I think of the 5 I rolled, I think I managed to channel 4 powered dispel dice. So because of my buddy King Khalifa was unable to get most of his spells off like he usually does, however, he was able to get Earthblood off onto his unit of archers, which gives him a 5-up regen for the most part. And that's pretty much it for the magic phase. So with the magic phase over with, we go directly to the shooting phase. And in the shooting phase, he basically concentrated fire with Rommel's Rangers off of my skinks. Unfortunate for him, though, he was only able to kill 3 of my skinks, which is perfectly fine with me, so that part was pretty much awesome. So with the shooting phase over with, we go directly to the combat phase. And in the combat phase, my poor Charizards. 2 of my Charizards get crushed beneath the iron wheels of the Panzer Baron, so that part was kind of sad too. I was unable to do anything against my opponent either. So needless to say, I lost this fight by a landslide. There was no way I was going to be able to recruit this. I basically had to roll Snake Eyes in order to escape, and even with Cold-Blooded, that was not going to happen. And as you can see in this photo, the last of my Charizard just fled off the edge of the table because he does not want to get crushed by a steam tank. And to be perfectly honest, I really don't blame him. So that pretty much ends up turn number 2 for the Empire. Alright, so that takes directly to the top of turn number 3 for the Lizardmen, and this photo is after the movement phase, and as you can see in this photo, I decided to take the plunge. So as you can see in this photo, the first thing I do, of course, is I declare a couple of charges. The first thing I do, of course, I declare a charge with Gatorade and Powerade. Gatorade and Powerade do manage to slip through the buildings and go directly into the front of the Vagrant Brotherhood, so that part was kind of cool. Unfortunately for me, though, with my Blood Roar ability, though, the Vagrant Brotherhood was able to pass their psychology test no problem, so they stood their ground, so they didn't flee like I was hoping, but, you know, them's the breaks. Unfortunately for me, though, when I declared a charge with my Jurassic Jousters, though, I failed my charge distance. I think I only moved up like 4 inches with that, so that part was really, really sad as well. Alright, so here's a close-up of the Jurassic Jousters. Unfortunately for these guys, though, they did fail their charge, so because they're kind of stranded in the middle of this little village, unable to help support Gatorade and Powerade against the members of the Vagrant Brotherhood. At the same time, here's a close-up of Powerade and Gatorade charging directly into the Vagrant Brotherhood, engaging those guys in close combat. So I'm really excited to see exactly how my Gatorade and Powerade as my Scar Veteran on top of a Carnosaur. I want to see exactly how they stack up against an army like this. And here's a close-up of the Karma Chameleons going directly into Rommel's Rangers, as well as my Guacamole Guards going into the other 5-man detachment for Rommel's Rangers. And finally, here's a close-up of the Thesaurus getting ready to get charged by the Panzer Wolf as well. So with the move phase over with, we actually skipped Magic phase, because Magic phase is actually quite uneventful. I wasn't able to get any of my spells off. And because of that, we skipped the shooting phase, because everyone's engaged in close combat, and we go directly to the combat phase. So in the combat phase, starting off with Gatorade and Powerade, the first thing I do is I actually declare a challenge with Gatorade directly against Sir Tybault Krauss, who is the Vagrant Brother Knight. He is the guy who's the Imperial Captain with a Crown of Command. He accepts the challenge, and the two of us actually go out in close combat. Needless to say, I put the hurting directly onto Sir Tybault Krauss and actually killed that guy outright with 2 additional wounds on top of that, so that part was amazing. At the same time, unfortunately for me though, Powerade, my Carnosaur, flubbed his rolls for the most part in close combat. He did manage to kill one guy though with his Thunderstomp, so that part was kind of cool. And of course, when they actually retracted their attacks back, luckily for me, my opponent decided to focus most of his attacks directly onto my Old Blood, my Scar Veteran. But unfortunately, though, he was hitting on 5s just because he had the sword, he had the the Fencer's Blades, as well as the Glittering Scale. So because of that, he was unable to cause any wounds directly against my Old Blood, who was sorry, not Old Blood. Scar Veteran, who was on top of the Carnosaur. Now, he did manage to put a wound on my Carnosaur, which triggered the Blood Frenzy on the Carnosaur, so because he does have Frenzy for the rest of the game now, and that was the only thing he was able to do. So needless to say, I actually won this combat by quite a bit. So I actually managed to get 4 wounds on Sir Tybault Krauss, as well as another knight. I also charged 4 as well, bringing my combat score up to 6. Now, granted, they have ranks on me. They actually have 1 rank on me, so it drops it by 1. I also caused wound 2, and I won this by 4. Now, because they have more ranks than me, they actually are steadfast, which means they roll on their unmodified leadership because of that. Now, unfortunately for King Khalifa, when he rolled his first leadership test, he actually rolled, I think a 10 was the first one he actually rolled. So because he's within range of his Battle Standard Bearer, so he rolls again, and unfortunately he rolls an 11 on the second one, which means that his unit breaks and flees. I pursue because I have to, because my mount is frenzied, and they rolled a 9 to escape. I rolled an 11, so because of that, Powerade and Gatorade runs that unit down and slaughters the Vagrant Brotherhood to the last man as well. Unfortunately for me, though, I did flee off the edge of the table by doing so, because I do really go off the edge of the table, so he will not be coming back for the rest of this round, but at the same time, though, net myself some juicy points and destroy my buddy's left-hand flank entirely. Meanwhile, the fight between the 5-man detachment of Rommel's Rangers against the Karma Chameleons was a complete slaughter. Now, if you do notice, I'm missing 2 Skink Warriors, and the reason why is because that detachment decided to stand and fire as a charge reaction. Because of that, I did lose 2 of my Skinks from that, but in close combat, though, I butchered those guys to the last man, and obviously I overran and go directly into the Blue Company, so I'll be fighting against those Halberdiers in the next round. And the exact same thing happened here on the right-hand side as well. Managed to kill all the members of Rommel's Rangers detachment, which overrun directly into the Red Company as well. And I'll be fighting those Halberdiers in the next turn as well. So with the combat phase over with, we go directly to the bottom of the turn for the Empire. So that takes directly to the bottom of turn number 3 for the Empire, and this photo is taken after the movement phase. As you can see in this photo, not much really movement has happened for the most part. What ends up happening is that King Khalifa does declare a charge with Rommel's Rangers. The 10-man unit of Rommel's Rangers goes directly into the right-hand flank of the Karma Chameleons, so catching them in a pincer attack between the Blue Company and the as well as Rommel's Rangers as well, so that part was kind of hard. At the same time, his steam tanks, this is where the most dramatic movement actually took place. Both of his steam tanks, the Panzer Baron as well as the Panzer Wolf, both roll up 4 dice for steam points. They use all 4 of those dice to charge directly into the middle, right into the midst of the Thesaurus, so that part was intense. So just like that, my Thesaurus now have, 8d3 impact hits going directly into that unit, so that part is absolutely insane. As you can see in this photo, the Black Company actually moved back a little bit. They actually marched back, I think 4 inches what they decided to do, so that way they can give themselves some more breathing space, so that way they don't get flanked by either the Karma Chameleons or my Guacamole Guards. And that pretty much makes the move phase for this part. So here's a close-up of the Blue Company as well as Rommel's Rangers going into a pincer attack directly against the Karma Chameleons, and so that part's kind of rough because by having those guys on my flank, they have disrupted me now, which means I lose rank bonuses unless, of course, I bring those guys down a rank. And here's a close-up of the Black Company marching back a little bit to stay out of harm's way from both of my units, as well as the Guacamole Guards currently engaged in close combat with the Red Company. And finally, here's a close-up of the Panzer Baron as well as the Panzer Wolves charging directly into the Thesaurus with 8d3 impact hits coming my way, which is absolutely horrifying. So, not looking forward to that. So during the magic phase, my opponent once again casts his spell in order to get Throne of Vines again. I forgot to mention this, but in the past magic phase, I forgot to take a photo of it. I do apologize. The reason why my magic phase is so lackluster is because I use all my dice to dispel Throne of Vines, and I forgot to take a photo of it, so I do apologize for that one. So because that King Khalifa does manage to get Throne of Vines again on his units, that way he gets buffs to all of his Lore of Life spells. He does try to cast off a couple of spells with Maximilian Max as well as Viktor Helsbraad of the Waaaghz, but luckily for me, that was able to dispel most of them, except he was able to slip through Flesh to Stone off onto the Red Company. So because of that, those guys have a 4+ toughness. So these guys are now toughness 7 halberdiers. So I do have my work cut out for me on that one. And that pretty much makes the magic phase for this part. So the magic phase over with, we skip the shooting phase because there's no shooting elements because everyone's engaged in close combat, and we go directly to the combat phase. So during the combat phase, first of all, 8d3 impact hits on a single unit is horrifying. As you can see in this photo, he did manage to kill 13 of my Thesaurus. So 13 of my Source Warriors get grounded beneath the iron-shod wheels of the Panzer Baron as well as the Panzer Wolf. But luckily for me though, I am steadfast because I do have additional rank bonuses on that part, so I do test on my unmodified leadership. And because I'm Lizardmen and I have leadership awesome, I do not break, so instead I do a quick combat reform. And I put my Source Warriors in a column formation 5 wide. As you can see, it's now 4 deep as well. I have no illusions. My Source Warriors are not going to be able to do very much against these two steam tanks because of the number of wounds they have as well as the armor plane they have. So I'm not really going to do much against them. I'm just trying to keep these guys engaged and tar pitted down for the most part just because I have such a huge unit of Source Warriors. And by keeping them in column formation like this, I could then have unmodified leadership tests because I have steadfast. Nothing's going to be able to flank me to disrupt me, so it kind of works out for the best. Meanwhile, combat between the Red Company as well as Rommel Rangers was actually Red Company as well as the Guacamole Guard was actually quite actually really pretty brutal. I was able to kill 4, I think, members of the Red Company. They were able to kill 4 of my Guacamole Guard, my Temple Guard. So that part was pretty rough. So because of that, I believe my opponent I believe I actually won this one. Yeah, I actually won this one because of my rank bonuses. But my opponent was able to basically pass his leadership test, so he doesn't go anywhere because they don't break. Meanwhile, combat between the Blue Company as well as my Karma Chameleons is actually quite well. In the end, my opponent was able to kill one of my Karma Chameleons. Unfortunately for King Khalifa, he just kind of flubbed his hit rolls really, really bad on this one, so he wasn't able to hit much of anything. I, on the other hand, however, was able to kill 6 members of the Blue Company. And the reason why that was the case is because of my Kroxagor. My Kroxagor were the guys that did most of the damage on those guys, so that part was really cool because the Karma Chameleon has 3 Kroxagor in it with great weapons. At the same time, I was able to kill 2 members of the Rommel's Rangers with my Skinks on the right-hand flank as well, so that part was epic. So because I did manage to take away their rank bonus, so that way they can't disrupt me anymore, so that part was awesome. Needless to say, I actually won this combat by a fair amount, and unfortunately for King Khalifa, he did have to take a break test, and he failed that break test. The Blue Company, I think, flees, 4 or 5 inches, and I pursue 6. So because of that, my Karma Chameleons run those guys down and butcher the Blue Company all the way to the last man. At the same time, Rommel's Rangers flees 12 inches and lands right in the middle of the Guacamole Guard. So because I do have to take dangerous terrain tests, they lose 3 more of Rommel's Rangers, and they continue fleeing on the right-hand side. So things are looking really good right now for me on the left-hand flank. So with that, we go directly to the top at turn number 4 for the Lizardmen, and this photo is taken after the movement phase, and as you can see, a couple things end up happening. First of all, my Carnosaur as well as my Scar Veteran, Gatorade and Powerade run back on the table again. They face off against the right-hand side, looking at the left-hand flank of the Black Company. I also do a quick swift reform real fast with my Karma Chameleons, who also face off against the right-hand side as well. I also march up the Jurassic Jousters at the left-hand flank, so that way all 3 units can then charge directly into the left, or into the front rather, of the Black company. Meanwhile, the Guacamole Guards are still engaged in close combat with the red company, as well as the Source are still targeting those 2 steam tanks, and that pretty much makes up the movement phase for this one. So here's a close-up of Gatorade and Powerade, as well as the Karma Chameleons and the Jurassic Jousters, who are moving up as quick as they can in order to swarm onto the Black Company. And here's a close-up of Guacamole Guards still engaged in close combat with the Red Company, with Rommel's Rangers who took dangerous terrain tests in the early round because they fled right through that unit as well. And finally, here's a close-up of the Desaurus, who are basically holding down both the Panzer Baron as well as the Panzer Wolf. I have no illusions of actually winning anything. I'm just trying to keep these guys bogged down and tar pitted up as long as I possibly can, so that my other units could destroy the rest of the infantry units for the Schwarzwald Free Companies. So with the move phase over with, we go directly to the magic phase. And in the magic phase, it was pretty much lackluster. I actually used most of my power dice to dispel Flesh to Stone, which was on top of the Red Company. So because that spell does go away, which means these guys are now back to being Toughness 3 Halberdiers, which are much easier to kill. And the rest of my spells got dispelled by Viktor Helsbraad of the Wilds. And that pretty much makes my magic phase for this one. So the magic phase over with, we skip the shooting phase because none of my shooting elements can shoot, and we go directly to the combat phase. So starting off with the Panzer Baron as well as the Panzer Wolf fighting against the Thesaurus. Luckily for me though, my opponent wasn't able to do anything because he has out of steam points. His engineers could not do anything against my Saurus Warriors. And as you can see, my Saurus Warriors did diddly squat against these steam tanks. They with 1-up armor, toughness 6. My guys aren't going to do anything against them. I don't care how many attacks they get. So that part was kind of sad, but you know, kind of fitting. Meanwhile, combat between the Guacamole Guards as well as the Red Company was absolutely fantastic. I managed to kill 8 of those guys at the same time, only losing 4 Guacamole Guards at the same time. Needless to say, I won this combat by a landslide, and King Khalifa does have to take a break test. Unfortunate for him, though, he does fail his break test. He flees, and I pursue. King Khalifa rolls a 8, so his men actually float back 8 inches, but I overrun. I roll a perfect 12, so because that I rolled boxcars, and just like that, my Guacamole Guard do pursue the Red Company, managed to kill them all the last man, and just stop just short of the edge of the table at the same time. So that part was pretty epic as well, and that pretty much makes up my turn for this one. So that takes directly to the bottom of turn number 4 for the Empire, and this photo is taken after the movement phase, and for the most part, not much really movement happened for the most part for King Khalifa. He does a swift reform with the Black Company that turns over to the left-hand side to square off against the Karma Chameleons, as well as Powerade and Gatorade and the Jurassic Jousters. At the same time, he also has Maximilian Max turn 180 around, so that way he can face off against the Guacamole Guards. Meanwhile, he does generate power steam points for his 2 steam tanks. The Panzer Wolf actually generates 4 steam points. Unfortunately for King Khalifa though, the Panzer Bear does roll another misfire, so because he does take a wound, but also gains an additional steam point as well. So now he's got 5 steam points that he can use for grind attacks, which is terrifying. Unfortunately for him also, the Rommel's Rangers did not rally, so because they're continuing fleeing, I think they fled like 5 or 6 inches to the right hand side, and they're fleeing still on the other side of the table. And that pretty much makes up King Khalifa's move phase for this one. So here's a close of the Black Company as well as Maximilian Mask getting ready to face off against the rest of my army and try to keep themselves from being stuck in a pincer attack. And here's a close up of Rommel's Rangers just running it back as quick as they can, trying to escape so that way they don't get killed. And finally, here's a close-up of the Panzer Baron as well as the Panzer Wolf going directly with grind attacks into the source. As you can see in this photo, the Panzer Wolf actually managed to raise up 4 steam points. At the same time, the Panzer Baron managed to raise up 5 steam points because it took a wound from the misfire. But it was, I forgot the name of the rule, but it basically allows you to generate additional steam points in exchange for wounds. And that's what ended up happening there on the left-hand side. Now, we skipped the magic phase because, unfortunately for my buddy King Khalifa, when he rolled for magic, he rolled Snake Eyes because he wasn't able to get much of anything done with the magic phase. And there is no shooting phase because everything is engaged in close combat, and that takes us directly to the combat phase. And combat. As you can see here, the ground attacks were absolutely horrific. He killed 15 of my Saurus Warriors from the source. It's because I lose 15 Saurus Warriors. Luckily for me, though, I still have a rank, and I have 12 fighters left. So I'm 2 fighters away from being down to a quarter I need insane courage to hold. And because I have a rank, I still get my my steadfast bonus. So I do roll off my unmodified leadership, and with cold blood, no less, my Saurus Warriors are holding up these 2 steam tanks. I don't care how many deaths these guys are taking. These guys are awesome. In my opinion. They're surviving this long against steam tanks. No other unit in the world of Warhammer can do this. None. And I'm just absolutely satisfied exactly the way how hard they're holding out for the most part. So with that, we go directly to the top of turn number 5 for the Lizardmen, and this photo is taken after the move phase, and as you can see in this photo, I go in for the kill. I declare charges with Powerade and Gatorade, the Karma Chameleons, as well as the Jurassic Jousters. All three of those units go smashing directly into the front of the Black Company, so catching those guys up in the front there. I also do a swift reform real quick with the Guacamole Guards to face off against the left-hand side against one lone wizard, which is Maximilian Max, who's going to be all by himself, and at the same time, my 12 remaining Thesaurus Warriors are trying to hold up against those 2 steam tanks, and so that part is going to be kind of rough. And that pretty much makes up my move phase for this one. So here's a close-up of Powerade and Gatorade, as well as the Karma Chameleons and the Jurassic Jousters going directly into the front of the Black Company, and I'm really excited to see exactly how this fight's going to go. And at the same time, here's a close-up of the Guacamole Guards squaring off against one lone wizard, Maximilian Max. And finally, here's a close-up of the Panzerwolf as well as the Panzer Baron, getting ready to grind the last of my Thesaurus to death. So with the move phase over with, we go directly to the magic phase. And during the magic phase, I actually had a pretty lackluster magic phase, all things considered. I did try to cast Arcane and Forging off with Kermit the Slam, but my opponent was able to stop that spell. I was casting it off directly into his Battle Standard Bearer to destroy the Griffon Banner, but unfortunately for me though, that did not pan out, so because of that didn't go, that went away. So with the rest of my Paradise, I then basically launched the boosted version of Soul Quench, which gives you 46 strength for hits. And I put that directly onto Maximilian Max, and I had no problem killing that lower metal wizard, and he is now dead and gone. So with the magic phase over with, we skip the shooting phase because all my shooting elements are engaged in close combat, and we go directly to the combat phase. And the combat phase. Good gravy, the combat phase. So, it was an absolute bloodbath. First of all, I declare a challenge with Powerade as well as Gatorade as well as Powerade. I declare a challenge, and of course my opponent decides to have his Griffon Guard, Dieter Hans, the Griffon Guard basically sorry, not Dieter Hans, Dieter Munz, the Griffon Guard, who is his Battle Standard Bearer. He actually enters the call. Needless to say, Powerade and Gatorade had no problem whatsoever killing that guy, so because I killed him and plus got 3 wounds on top of that for my maximum amounts. I actually got quite a bit more, but you know, them's the breaks at that point as well with Gatorade. He was the only one doing that. I think I got 3 wounds or 4 wounds on him in the end. But anyways, I can only count 3 of them though. So because of that, we go to the rest of the combat phase. My Carnosaur Powerade managed to kill a good handful of these guys between his close combat attacks as well as his stomps. My Kroxagore also kind of helped out too from the Karma Chameleons, so that part was kind of nice, and same thing with my Jurassic Jousters. Meanwhile, my opponent of course counter strikes back, and he actually does quite a bit of damage to me as well. When it's all said and done, the smoke finally clears. In the end, he's able to kill 13 of my Skink Warriors, as well as put a wound onto Gatorade, my rider, my Scar Veteran. And at the same time, I was able to kill 16 of his Black Company. I was able to kill 16 Great Swords as well as his hero, with the 3 wounds on top of that as well. So because that, I won this combat by a landslide, needless to say. Unfortunately for my opponent though, he lost the Griffon Banner, so because I was able to count his double rank bonuses, he has to take a break test, and unfortunately for him though, he fails that break test. And unfortunately for King Khalifa, when he rolls a break, he rolls a 3. I roll a 6 with Powerade as well as Gatorade, and I run that unit down and slaughter them to the last man, killing all members of the Black Company as well. Meanwhile, in the combat phase, I guess those engineers heard about their friends from the Black Company being killed, because those 2 engineers, man, they stepped up and they killed my last 2 Saurus Warriors in the back rank. Now, the reason why that's so bad is because, yes, I still have a rank, right, and you'd think I get steadfast, but the problem is, though, this unit now is only a quarter of its original size, and per the rulebook, which means I need insane courage to hold my ground to stay. Unfortunately, I do not stay, and I flee. And the 2 guys who got killed must have been extremely popular, because as you can see in this photo, the Saurus run 12 inches, and they just like run as quick as they possibly can in order to escape the hell that's coming their way from the Panzer Baron as well as the Panzerwolf. Unfortunately for my buddy King Khalifa though, he can't pursue because of the Steel Behemoth rule for his 2 steam tanks, but at the same time though, there's no way in heck my guys are going to be able to rally, and that pretty much ends it. And there you go, ladies and gentlemen, that takes directly to the end of the game with a victory for the Lizardmen. My buddy King Khalifa has 2 steam tanks left, but he knows exactly what's going to happen for the last turn. I'm just going to dodge those steam tanks, so there's no reason for him to keep on going any further, and that pretty much ends the game with a victory for the Lizardmen. So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to go directly to the after action report, because this game is now officially over.
That's it, man. It's game over, man. It's game over.
Sure, I could have stayed in the past. Could have even been king. But in my own way, I am king. Hail to the king.
Alright folks, now it's time for the After Action Report. This is a part of the battle report we talk about what went well, what went poorly, and what we can learn for the next time that we do battle. This is the After Action Report for the Golden Age Warhammer Fantasy Battle Report number 131, and this one ended being a victory for yours truly. I managed to score 2,796 victory points, while King Khalifa was able to score 818 victory points. For King Khalifa, he lost Gregor von Konigsmarck, Viktor Helsbraad of the Waaaghz, Munz the Griffon Guard, Sir Tybault Krauss the Vagrant Knight, Maximilian Max the Red Company, the Blue Company, Rommel's Rangers, the Vagrant Brotherhood, the Black Company, Donner, and Blitzen. For my losses, I lost the Saurus, as well as the Charizards and the Bulbasaur. So, this game really illustrated the staying power of the Lizardmen, which is a totally different game experience from playing the Stormcast Eternals, which I was playing earlier in our Battle Report series. And the Stormcast Eternals are very much a glass cannon army in comparison. I pretty much had all phases of this game on lockdown, the magic as well as the combat phases specifically. During the magic phase, I was pretty much able to destroy most of King Khalifa's killing power in the Great Cannon as well as the Hellblaster Volley Gun. The only thing I did not like about this list so far are my Skink Priests. I'm actually thinking about changing them up a little bit to give them more offensive abilities, because while the lore of high magic is a pretty good lore, I just don't have enough killing power in it in my opinion. And so because of that, I'm kind of on the fence on it still. I'm still debating what kind of changes if I'll make, if any. But for now, though, I'm thinking about it. It's in the back of my head right now. Now, as for the combat phase, I did have that in spades, however. The Lizardmen do have really lower weapon skill, so that part is true. But their higher strength and predatory fire abilities really does make up for this. So as you can see, I just laid waste to everything I was able to get my grips on in close combat as well. Now, the shooting phase is pretty weak in this army, and that's something I'm not used to playing, because usually I like to have a really shooting, powerful army. But, you know, it's something I'll get. It's fine. I'll get used to it in time, so it's not much of a big deal. Now, movement was pretty difficult in this battle report, and the reason why is because of all the terrain pieces, but in the end though, I'm still pretty satisfied with the end result, because I was able to destroy King Khalifa's soft choices and then basically swarm his more hard choices that he has in his army as well. Now, as for King Khalifa, he did admit that by not taking the offensive and actually playing defensively and staying static for most of the time, really did hamper his abilities. He was mainly reacting to what I was doing the entire time, and I pretty much set the tone, the pace, and the initiative in the fight. He agreed with me that the next time he's just going to take the offense no matter what. His list is primarily a combat-oriented list anyways, so he's going to use that Griffin tactic with his skirmishers to better abilities. Instead of playing defensively, he's going to take the offense this one next time. Currently, this Lizardman army right now is sitting at 4 victories and 0 losses, and I can't wait to see what it does next in the next battle report that we fight against. So in the end, this was a fantastic game against an amazing opponent. I love playing against my buddy King Khalifa whenever I get a chance, and I am looking forward to the rematch. So that's good for this one, you guys. As always, please feel free to like, comment, and or subscribe. You guys' input is invaluable to us as always. Also, check us out on Facebook, Instagram, as well as blogger.com for all latest great hobby news related to this channel. That's good for this one, guys. We'll catch you guys next one. Peace out and stay classy.